All right, so I'd like to talk about how urban agriculture increases food security and has additional benefits. So we're going to talk about 5 different topics. The first one is going to be what is food security? Next, we're going to have why is food security important? How urban agriculture improves food security? And we're going to have the food project as an example of someone implementing urban agriculture in order to improve food security. And then I'm just going to include a little bit of other information that I think is important and relevant to this presentation. So what is food security? There are a lot of different definitions, but these are the 2 that I found the most compelling, although they are quite different. So first we have food security exists when all people at all times have physical and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food to meet their dietary needs and food preferences for a healthy and active life. So this was quoted in a paper by Pinstrup Anderson in 2009 from the World Food Summit in 1996. So obviously this is quite dated. And that's actually they actually mention that in the next definition here as to why that might be a bit dated. But I do think that this is a good definition according to the traditional sense of what food security means. So let's take a look at a more modern definition and the problems that they have with these old definitions. Quote, food policy, dietary guidelines, and food security strategies need to evolve from the limited historical approach, mainly focused on nutrients and health, to a new one considering the environmental, socioeconomic, and cultural impact, and thus the sustainability of diets. End quote. So this was by Sarah Majem et al. In 2020. I have them listed on the reference page at the end of this section of slides. So this definition, I like it a lot. I think it's a lot more relevant because it talks about the sustainability of food security. And in this day and age, I just think that's more important than ever. So it touches on the nutrients and health. It doesn't say that we shouldn't focus on nutrients and health, but it does say that we need to focus a little bit less on that and more on the sustainability, which will in turn improve food security as a whole. So why is food security important? So this is going to be the problem statement. People need to eat or they're going to starve, and that's obviously a huge problem. And then if people are starving, they might do rash things, and a community of people doing rash things is obviously going to be very unhealthy, and it's not going to be good for anybody. And it turns out that this affects low-income individuals more than any other type of individuals. And this was quoted by Siegner in a paper from 2018. This is a graph from the United Nations website on the total world population over time. And currently, it's 2024, so the world population is about 8.2 billion or so. And eventually, in about 16 years or so, the population is going to be at 9 billion. And then by 2050, the population is going to go from 9 billion to 9.7 billion. So the world population is increasing rapidly, and agriculture already takes up about 40% of the land mass of the world, and that's a huge portion of the land. So you'd think we'd have enough food to feed everybody, but it turns out that we do not. There are still people starving, so that's obviously a huge problem, and food security is essentially the reason for this starvation that's happening despite all of the agriculture going on. So how does urban agriculture improve food security? Let's do a little analysis on this here. So there are multiple different kinds of benefits to urban agriculture. It's actually not just with food security, there's also additional benefits as well. But as far as food goes, urban agriculture increases food availability. So there's going to be more food available for more people, at least the ones that are nearby people that are practicing urban agriculture or are practicing urban agriculture themselves. Because there's just going to be more food around them. And then this also increases food accessibility. And this is different in that if someone, let's say they had very low income and there was food available in their area, but it was too expensive for them, that would mean they have low access or they couldn't get to it for geographic reasons. Well, urban agriculture solves that problem by bringing it closer and also potentially making it cheaper, depending on the situation. It also increases food stability, meaning there's going to be more food depending on the time of year. And then there's also additional benefits. So there's community stability that gets increased as a result of urban agriculture. That's because people can come together and work on a common goal together. And that creates a great community environment, quite opposite to an environment where people are all starving together. And there are also environmental benefits, quite a few environmental benefits from urban agriculture, arguably. So one of those is climate change mitigation. If you're greenifying the area, urban heat island reduction. So if there's a parking lot, let's say, and that parking lot is replaced with an urban agriculture area, that area is going to be much more resistant to heat, and it's actually going to cool it down quite significantly. And it's also going to heat it up if it's a little bit cooler. It can also localize farming, which is more sustainable because then less food has to be shipped from afar and bring to that area. It'll reduce pollution, it'll reduce noise. So there's all sorts of different environmental benefits to urban agriculture. There's also economic benefits. So, the more food you grow, the less food you have to buy at the store, and thus it saves you a little bit of money. As according to Lucertini and Giustino from a paper in 2021. So the food project is a great example here, and this is essentially the solution to food security. They've achieved it in real life. So they're based in Massachusetts, and they support the right to grow food. They use food to create personal and social change. So this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, creating a community and a common goal for people, one place for people to go and work towards something that's actually meaningful. They use volunteers and donations to accomplish their goals. So this wouldn't really be feasible without volunteers just offering their help. And then it also wouldn't be feasible without the donations they get from organizations and companies that give them money to do what they do. So that's an essential part of the food project and many other urban agriculture or food security organizations is getting donations or funding, whether it's from a company or from the government, wherever they have to get it. It's essential for them because they can't make enough money to support themselves most of the time. They have built more than 1,400 raised bed gardens. They've grown over 5 million pounds of produce, which is quite an impressive number to me. And they've provided nearly 100,000 hours of service at more than 15 local hunger relief organizations. And I got all this information directly off of their own website. If you just look up thefoodproject.org. So some other important information, this is potentially also part of the solution section, is that urban agriculture should not be the only means of creating food security. That's because, as great as it is, it's just not going to take care of it all on its own. There's plenty of other things that people can do and they should do in order to increase food security. Urban agriculture is just a great option, and it's gonna help. It's not going to be the sole solution on its own. People must also advocate for good urban agriculture and food security policies. That way, it's going to be financially possible because, as we mentioned earlier, it's not possible without donations or grants or funding from someone else to support these food security organizations. They just can't do it on their own for various reasons, and that's why it's so important that they advocate for good urban agriculture and food security policies. Even well-intentioned policies can be twisted due to current political and socioeconomic climates. So this is something cited in SIGNR 2018, page 2 through 2021, or page 2 through 21. Essentially, things like racism, classism, all sorts of other socioeconomic circumstances will affect how these policies that people advocate for will actually turn out. It can actually be a bad thing if they're not monitored from the beginning to the end. So it's really, really important that someone who's on the good side of things is taking care of that monitoring. So just to conclude and reflect on this presentation, food security has many different definitions, and the old ones may need updating. Food security is important to keep individuals and communities healthy, and this is actually very, very important. The benefits of the community as a result of urban agriculture might be even greater than the benefits from food security alone. And urban agriculture supports food security and the environment in many ways. The Food Project is a great example of urban agriculture increasing food security. And finally, urban agriculture is not the only way to food security. And that concludes the presentation. And finally, here's a list of the references I used in this presentation.